Alright, I'm back for another video. Here is a envelope junk journal. I just have some seam binding to tie it up. So this is the cover, it's lace, some vintage trims. This is, I don't know, from a tablecloth or some kind of runner or something. I can't remember. But I cut it up and glued it on here. This is an envelope junk journal. So you take envelopes and you make junk journals out of them. And so this is like a traveler size. And the information right here is a 4 1/4 by 9 1/4, and it's got 56 pages. So here we go. We got this. This is a vintage or antique photo, I should say. I just whipped around it, tore around it. I wish I had inked it up. I didn't have any ink. This journal and the other journal I've had for quite a long time. So I wanted to put them up, show you a flip through of them, and then I'm gonna list them to my eBay shop. And so it's just a vintage photo and vintage doily here. And like I said, I didn't have any inks at that time when I was making these journals, so, but now I do. And it's got some coffee stained paper. This is some very fragile, but not very fragile, but it's kind of fragile. Writing paper, children's writing paper. I got it in an antique shop. And this is a little baggie. So it's got new and vintage stuff in here. Here's a little envelope. I got this from a journal that I had purchased. I don't have a way to make envelopes like this. I don't have a punch. And but I wish I did, but I don't. But I figured I'd add that. Here's something from Tim Holtz. Just a cut apart. And a scrappy pad here. And this is some handmade paper. I didn't make it, but some handmade paper. Just some scrappy paper there, notepad, and just some coffee stained paper. And this is a vintage receipt with a vintage picture and some cheesecloth and some vintage trim. This came from, I don't know if it came from a curtain or a tablecloth. I can't remember where I got that, but I cut it off and then I made it into like a piece of lace because there was a lot more added on top of it, and I folded it over and just glued that on. Well, I actually sewed it first and then I glued it because I sewed it together to make it look like a piece of lace. And this is just to cut apart, some music paper. And this is the first signature. This is a junk mail envelope. I just inked it up, put some scrapbook paper on there. Save the junk mail on the inside. You are my sunshine. I just inked that up a little bit. I made this altered paper clip. This is a antique. It's an antique price tag from probably a grocery store or maybe a 5 and dime store. I'm not really sure. And I have one that actually has 1 cent. It's so funny. So I have little ones like this, and I have some big ones. So lots of space. This is from a vintage, some kind of thing. It was a funky looking shape. I didn't even know what it was made for, but I cut it up and had some staining here. There's nothing I could do. It was already in there. It was kind of a stiff, like somebody had sprayed it with or soaked it in starch. And but I glued it on here, and it already had some of that grungy look because it was stained. And just glued it on here, some trim. There's a pocket. And this is an envelope made out of a book page, just to cut apart. You could put up here, whatever. some vintage buttons, and a little scrappy notebook, and a index card, and some cheesecloth, just a piece of paper that I inked around. It's just a little tag that I got from something I bought, and some fabric here, and a antique mapping paper, and I just inked it up to, you know, give it some grungy look. Part of this is just glued down on this page. It's part of a tablecloth, and some more trims, and yeah, and then this is some vintage, not vintage, yeah, it is vintage because I purchased it from a yard sale. And then this is an advertisement here from a 1940s magazine. I just glued them on there. They were very brittle. A little bit of washi tape, and then some trim. This is not vintage. I think this came from Hobby Lobby. And then this is I think this is the middle. Yeah, and this is the second signature. So this is an envelope too. An index card, but it's a graphed paper card that I just copy stained, and a vintage receipt, farm receipt for alfalfa, 1929. That's in there, and that's a pretty good size deep pocket. This has got some vintage buttons and a vintage thing that embroidery with dogs on it, some scrapbook paper. This is another one of those that I just inked around, one of them price things that would go on the shelf of a store. And I got several of those too. And then just a tag, and this is coffee stain inked around. Guest check. And then this is just another cut apart. And then this is a from a Betty Crocker book, some whatever you call it, recipes, and you could use that as a backdrop. Use it, make a bookmark, whatever you want with that. All right, this is some paper here. I had to tape it. This paper's fragile, and this is a vintage piece of ribbon. I glued this down to reinforce this paper. This is a just from a book page. It's just a piece that I had cut off. I inked around it a little bit, but it's some dishes. And some more of that trim. Here's another bag. Just got a couple pieces of ephemera in there. Some trim on here. And a pocket made out of a book page. Some more pieces of ephemera. And this right here is just from a composition book, English, very fragile page. I glued it on a piece of cardstock, and I inked around, and then I just added this little trim here that can't remember where it starts. Somewhere here. Oh, there it is, and you unwind it, and that way you could use this trim for whatever you want in this journal. And it's very soft. And this is the middle of the second signature, just a coffee dyed envelope. Of course, the glue came off, so I kind of think it's cool because then you can open it up and you can write on here everywhere, and then close it up, and there you go. So I kind of like that the glue came off and it opened up the envelope. This is vintage book page from a dictionary. Here's just a guest check, and here's another one of those altar paper clips, and I just put a vintage picture of a gentleman that was in the service on there. Another one of those bags And it just flips down. And this is a vintage that I decoupaged from the 1945, March 24th, 1945 magazine. And I just decoupaged that on there. And I'll sign this. So it says handmade with love, and I'll sign my name. So this is the journal, and I'll be listing that. I'm not sure how to do the listing. I usually do my videos before I do my listing for eBay, but I will list my shop name and the title of the journal. So if you want to look for that. So this is it.